So what do we have on the agenda for today? We really want, we got some very interesting speakers. They're really becoming kind of nationally acclaimed about some of the unique strategies they use to grow home and support its growth and really build an excellent team. So we're very excited to host these ladies. They've spoken for us before and they're kind of becoming, top billboard listed home program growers. So we're happy to have them here and share with all of you what they've been able to do. And learning about also the process where facilities have used the root cause analysis successfully to dive into a plan, do, study, act cycle. So unfortunately, that speaker from that facility had an emergency today. So Katie, our hospitalization quality lead, is going to cover her slides. Katie's very well aware of all the work this facility's done and can really summarize and give an excellent presentation. All right, guys, now we don't have any slides. So is someone pull me up some slides? Who are we making host? Is Aisha going to be host or?
Yeah, I'm host now. I'll be bringing them. It wasn't letting me share them for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. That delay was really, really slow when Stephanie was talking. I think it's going to be hard for the team presenting on those if they're that slow. So, all right, if you can advance me. Those are nice. Oh, there you go. I just wanted to remind everybody before I turn it over to our speakers that, anything you want to find, anytime you want to find it is here on that IPRO Learn login. Everybody should try to go in there and check things out. We do drop announcements, things that might be specific to your area, help you see policy changes or new coming programs that might be interesting to you. We do have the section where we release monthly activities for you all to take a look and maybe try some new or different things in the work that you're doing. And we try to keep up a CE offering there for our nurses and techs. So really, if you can create your own individual login for IPRO Learn, you can jump on and get some free CEs when we offer those. And then lastly, there's some great places to share your best practices or talk with your peers about what might be happening in your facility. So, and that's where this best practice presentation is going to go. Next slide. All right, so now I am going to end my session and turn it over to, I don't know, Yvonne, are you introducing the ladies from Mishawaka?
Sure. We just really wanted to share the amazing work that this Mishawaka facility is doing. They accomplish phenomenal outcomes. They use innovative thinking, true quality improvement, and very hard work. And you can just feel the passion and see it as they're presenting. So I hope you enjoy listening to them as much as we do. So I will give it to Tammy and Jana to share their amazing work.
Thank you, Yvonne. We appreciate it. So as Yvonne said, Mishawaka Home, we're located in northern Indiana, not far from the Michigan border and about a mile down from Notre Dame. So I'll kind of start it off a little bit because I'm kind of the newbie within the last 2 years. I transitioned from a hospital setting and management to dialysis. So technically my first time coming into the home setting for dialysis. So when I had first come, one of my backgrounds is taking maybe kind of like stagnant, maybe not performing to the standards areas. So usually departments and trying to turn them around within kind of the culture, looking at that, looking at quality and looking at outcomes. So when I came into the home department, the first thing I did was I just kind of did an assessment. And as I was doing that assessment, I was being told a little bit that, well, we think that, there's possibly issues with staffing, with the staff, that they're not wanting to kind of step outside the box. Well, when I did my assessment, that was the furthest thing from the truth. The staff was just amazing. They just needed to be able to have their wings open and let them fly. So when I first come into this program, they were very much a micromanaged staff. Everything was dictated in their entire day. And my management style is not that. I'm a firm believer in giving everybody the education, the resources that they need to be able to perform to the best of their ability. So as I started off, like I said, I removed those reins. We looked a little bit at what was happening within the program, and the program was staying right around 71 patients. At that point in time, they were mostly PD patients. We did have 2 HHD, but those were fairly new to the program. We didn't have a lot of buy-in from our physicians. They were pretty much kind of content with just having a PD population. The HHD was still very new to them. So it was really trying to change a little bit of mindset on that. And we had very antiquated practices. Not much computer usage. It was really mostly binders and papers. So there was a lot of work to be done on the front end after I had done my assessment of this. You can go to the next slide.
Okay, so our current state, where we are now. So currently we are the top facility in Network 9 for patients starting directly to home therapy. And within this last option year, we had 57 patients be able to do that. So that speaks, I think, volumes to the work we've been able to do over the last 12 to 18 months in our facility. In 2022, we were able to move 88 patients to home therapies and through our training facility, which is phenomenal considering that our entire census the year before was in the low 70s. So that's totally amazing. This year so far, we've trained 90 patients and we still have a few weeks to go. So we'll see where we end up this year. We have been very lucky in our area. And we've had 9 patients transplanted so far. This year in 2023 and 2022, we had 6. So we're doing better. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have 1 or 2 more, but we'll see how that works out. Right now, we do consider ourselves to be fully staffed within our clinic. So we've had to do a lot of creative thinking, outside the box kind of things. We've rearranged clinic hours, and we've gone to the staff, had their input in all of this. So right now, probably the biggest thing that we do is we have a 4-day work week with our staff. Our clinic is closed on Wednesdays, but we do 4 10-hour shifts. So that enables us to bring patients in later during the day for those patients who do work. And then it also gives our staff and our patients a break during the middle of the week so that they can kind of recoup. Staff can get their appointments and personal things done that they need to get done during the week, and they get a mental break, and then the patients also get a mental break during the middle of the week where they can kind of take in all the information that they've learned and kind of be able to come back on Thursday then with a fresh mindset and continue learning. So they've really been appreciative of that. We have a very high performing team in our facility. I don't know, but I'm sure a lot of you have probably been hearing a lot about Mishawaka Home this, Mishawaka Home that. We have a lot of visitors. We have a lot of people calling, emailing us with questions about, hey, what are you guys doing? We've heard this. How do you do it? Kind of thing. And we welcome that. Tammy and I both welcome all of that information. Those phone calls, those emails, questions, we are happy to help anybody out. We want to get what we are doing out there because we truly do believe it is what is best for the patients, not just here in Mishawaka, but what is best for these dialysis patients. Home therapies is where it's at. As part of that no limit mindset, what we've been able to do is develop that group training facility and the first company playbook for home therapies for FMC. So if you look at our backgrounds for Tammy and I, that is our training facility back there. We are able to train 8 patients at any one time. It is set up with 8 stations. So in any given day, depending on the mix, we train both home hemo and PD out there at the same time. If I have all PD patients out there, we can run 16 patients a day. So it just depends on what the mix of the population coming into the facility is, as to how many patients are out there at any one time. Next slide,
Don-
please.
Oh, Don, I was just going to piggyback off of that last slide a little bit. When we say, though, that we have a very high performing team, that team at the very beginning, I brought everybody together and we looked at where we were, and I sat them all down. What was the clinic looking like at that particular point in time, and where did they want to be? What was their ideal clinic, their ideal work environment? What did they see for their patients? And it was all the planning and the think tanking and brainstorming from all the staff that actually created what we have today. So it was changing the culture a little bit, and that was really important to do. We had to have all the buy-in from all the staff in order to make this happen. So when we say that they're high performers, we kind of say that they're owners, not renters. They are so high functioning that when we did that playbook, they were the ones coming. We were working together as a team, coming up with the different concepts and what the room would look like and how we would do everything. So, you know, when you go to look at your team that you have now and you're wanting to do some change, and you know, you have to have the buy-in and the feedback from your staff, because they're your experts. And then you help them to get to where they need to go. Next slide. Okay. So how did we improve? This was a lot. So when I talk about the culture, we had to get the buy-in from the staff. We also had to get the buy-in from our physicians, because at this point in time, we had 6 physicians who fed our clinic, and they were not huge proponents of home. So we kind of had to bring some of the concepts of what we wanted to try and what we wanted to do to our medical director. Now, our medical director was really good. He really worked with us. He listened, and then he really jumped on board with us and helped to propel where we wanted to go with the other physicians. So because of him, that helped so much with what we wanted to do. And like I said, with the staff, we really created that new culture. It was a can-do mindset. There was no limits. And how do we get our growth? How do we get more patients to come to home? We started to remove barriers too. And by removing barriers, one of the things, I have a background in Lean Six Sigma. So we looked at those processes and the principles for the basis of what lean principles are, and we applied that within the clinic. And we looked at everything. We did time studies to see how far a nurse had to walk to get supplies. We looked at some of the documentation that they were doing. Were they doing double or triple documentation? And how did we remove that? Every single thing in the clinic was on the table, and we looked at that. Everybody had a role in helping to eliminate anything that was considered duplication, or to look at those processes and make them better. We even incorporated what we call a care team assistant. It's a different role within our company, Fresenius, but what it does is it allows somebody to come in. They can assist with administrative duties. They can also assist in biomed, and then they can assist in the clinic with blood draws, phone calls, different things like that. And as we started to look at how we were going to do our staffing, that was another thing that we put onto the table, was our staffing model. We changed from a primary care model to a case management. And what that means is we have dedicated case managers, and then we have dedicated trainers. And when Donna was talking about the training room, which you can see in our backgrounds right here, you know, we have a very smooth transition from when the patients are training in that room to when then that they transition after they've graduated from their training into the case management. There's a lot of communication, a lot of handoffs that go back and forth. That way that nothing gets missed. Everything in our clinic has a process flow. So when we changed that staffing model, you know, it was a little bit something new to have to try for our staff. However, they've embraced it. And if you ask them today, they'll tell you they never want to go back to the old way. And like Donna said, we also had looked at the hours of our clinic. And by doing 4 days a week, we find that the patients love it. We find the staff, it's such a benefit to them. And in our area, I'm competing with almost 5 different area hospitals, and they usually offer 12-hour shifts. So to be able to have 4 10s, it was easier for us then to be able to get staff as we grew. One of the other things that we did is when we implemented our entire plan and our focus, we did base it off of relationship-based care nursing model by Jean Watson. And the reason that we did that was that we wanted everybody to know that relationships was where it was at. So everything that we do has the patient at the center of all decisions that we make. And by doing that and having that model, that's helped us to keep the focus that when we do have to make some of those decisions, the first thing we ask is, how does that benefit the patient? And so that's really what guides our practice in our clinic. One of the other huge things is that we had to build relationships with our outpatient clinics and our hospitals, because we really wanted to see that transition from the in-center to home. And we are one of the leaders, we are the leaders in Network 9 in most of the country on that transition from in-center to
So you could say you
home.
did the call now too.
Sorry. From in-center to home, and then also doing urgent and optimal starts directly from the hospital setting.
Here you go.
Okay, sorry about that. I keep getting put on mute. Like I said, in the last 6 months, we've seen a huge transition from our PD to HHD. And one of the reasons that we have really kind of seen that transition is because in this room where we talk about what the magic happens is the patients who are PD, they're watching those HHD patients. So they're seeing that transition. They're in there when the education is happening and the training. So to them, it's nothing abnormal. It's just part of the process. So they are seeing that. We also do monthly meetings with our in-center staff so that we can talk about patients who might want to transition. We do a lot of education. We have kidney care advocates that help to come give education. They come and bring the patients to the clinic, and they get to walk through and kind of see how the process is. The modified clinic layout, of course, we did. We had single rooms, and we transitioned and took existing footage that we already had to create our room here, what you see behind us in our screen, and that's our training facility. And we did all of this as of March of 2022. And in that first 10 months, we trained 88 patients. So we were quite busy doing all that. Next slide.
So this is a bigger, better picture of our training facility. We have 8 stations out there, and every station is plumbed for home hemodialysis, PD, both. You can't see it, but off in the corner to the left, there is a small closet type room, which we turned into a PD connections room. But we do PD connections in there, and then the patients come back out onto this training floor where they can have their group education done by the nurse. We have usually anywhere from, I don't know, probably 6 to 12 patients out there at a time. It just depends, because we do offer respite care also for home hemo and for PD. But usually this room, you'll find 2 RNs, 1 PCT, maybe 2 PCTs if we have one that we're bringing in to kind of learn the training side of things a little bit better. Maybe sometimes they will assist with cannulation and different things like that. stuff like that. But both modalities are done in this room at the same time, and that is what Tammy alluded to earlier. When the PD patients can actually see those hemo patients, then it's not as scary to them when it comes their time to have to transition to hemodialysis, and then we can keep them at home much longer. Next slide, please.
Did you want to do this one, Donna?
I can do this one.
You want me to? You want me to? Go ahead.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
So building our census, we have changed drastically. Back in the old days when I started doing home dialysis, we could pick and choose, cherry pick our patients. We do not do that. We accept anybody and everybody. We give everybody a chance. A lot of our patients who in-center staff, even doctors may say, you know, they're not a good candidate for home therapies. And we're like, let's bring them, let's give them a chance, let's try them. And we let them stay on home therapies until they absolutely prove to us that they cannot do that. So sometimes we do have, you know, one or two here and there that do need to go back to in-center. That is okay. If it's not the right therapy for them, that's fine. But we do need to at least give them the chance to be at home. We always give patients a choice. We have a lot of optimal and urgent starts that come to us directly from the hospital. And that's the way that we want it. Tammy and I have both done a lot of education with the local hospitals here in our area to educate their case managers about what the process is to getting these patients to home therapies instead of setting up those in-center patient spots. So that has been working in our favor recently. We have PCTs and RN champions within our outpatient clinics, and we meet with them, I think, on a quarterly basis, sometimes more frequently than that, but we always have communication back and forth with our outpatient clinics in our area so that we can say, hey, I've got an open spot in the training room. You got anybody that I need to go talk to? Can I bring somebody home? So we have, is it 6 now, Tammy? We have 6 outpatient clinics?
7, that's feeding
7.
us.
That are feeding us. So, you know, we have all of these different clinics that we are able to pull patients from. And that's been a really great thing for us. Our kidney care advocate, Victoria, in our area, she is totally awesome. All we have to do is contact her and she will bend over backwards to meet with these patients and discuss with them their options about going home. We have developed a patient pipeline. So we meet weekly. We have a phone call that our KCA leads, but we have our usually outpatient clinic. Somebody from one of the clinics is going to be on the call. We have a social worker on the call. Tammy and I are usually on the call, and I don't know, there's a bunch of other people who are invited to these calls. But we meet as a group weekly so that we can keep track on who has been educated, who is in the pipeline, who's ready to come to home therapies, who do I need to do home visits on so that I can get them ready to come for home hemo training and stuff like that. So that's been a godsend for us. We never had that in the past. Self-cannulation is a big, big, big thing, especially for these hemo patients. If you can get your in-center staff to help you teach those patients before they come to your training facility, that's going to save you time. It's going to save you headache, and it's going to be less fearful for your patient. So that has been a big help for us. We can usually shorten up their training time for these home hemo patients by at least a week, if not a little bit more, if they are already trained for cannulation by the time they come here. And then we've built in and built up our relationships with the area hospitals, the case managers. We've done lunch and learns with them to educate them about the process to getting them home, making sure that they have our contact information because they don't always know. They just assume, okay, this patient needs dialysis. Let's get an outpatient spot. We don't want that anymore. We want them to start thinking home is where it needs to be first. How do I get them a home training spot? That kind of stuff. Sorry, that's my dog. But we have been working diligently with the local hospitals to try to build up those relationships, and it is paying off.
Donna, before we go on to the next slide there, I was just going to say too, there was a couple of questions in the chat that probably would go with this, but So when we're open 4 days, we do have a nurse that is on call. They all rotate. They kind of take that when you have staff that is all involved, they are all high performers, and they take that call schedule, they all figure it out on their own, and it's Don and I usually don't get involved in it because you know, like I said, they're owners. So they do rotate in case anything is needed on the days that we're closed. I am there, even though the clinic's closed, I am there. So if there is something needed, I'm at the clinic on Wednesdays. And then for our ratio, so this is what's interesting. What we did too, that we didn't mention, was that everybody works up to their scope of practice. And with nurses, we want to take all those tasks that have been kind of delegated over the years to them away from them so that they can actually do nursing. So we employ LPNs. Most of our LPN that we have, he does the pets, he does, you know, medications. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Donna.
He does our flushes too.
Flushes. All of that is done with that. We also have PCT3s. They are, I mean, they are very knowledgeable, so they help out both within the clinic area and then in the training. And then we have what we call that the CTA, it's a care team assistant, and he can kind of be utilized within different areas. We have a secretary, and then we also have our own dedicated biomed, which is kind of unusual within our area to be able to have one. The reason being is when I said that we only had the 2 HHD to start with, we're at 31 and it'll be 32 starting tomorrow. So we have really grown our HHD population. And so having that dedicated biomed has really been something that we need. And then our doctors, getting them on board. I'll tell you, this is what I told the staff when I first came, as I told them, if we build it, they will come. And that has really kind of been our mantra. We've had to prove to the physicians what we can do. And I'll give you an example. We had a patient who was just really horrible. Nobody wanted to even have him in the in-center. He had security there with him every single day. And our mindset is we meet the patient where they're at. So we said, you know what, bring them home. Well, we got a lot of kickback on that. Like, nope, this isn't going to be good. Well, we pushed and we brought the gentleman to home. Now, we had found out he had been in prison for many, many years. So he was a little rough around the edges. However, we just met him with kindness. We met him where he was and tried to figure out what he wanted. What he wanted to do is he wanted to go to school. He wanted to be a barber, and he couldn't be a barber if he was sitting in the in-center because he would be missing out on school. So in the year that we had him, he was a solo patient. We trained him, sent him home. He went and started his barber school. He even got a part-time job in the local hospital. And then within that year, he actually received a transplant. So if we would have given up and listened to everybody saying no, 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 he would never have been where he's at. And I can tell you, he was rough around the edges when he started with us, but he became part of our home family. And we never had outbursts from him. We never had to have security with him in our clinic. And he just loved everybody at the clinic. And we have so many of those stories. You just can't give up, and you can't put labels on people because everybody has a beginning and you have to meet them where they're at. Next slide. Sorry. Okay, so here, this is where you're going to hear a lot. So here's where my passion is going to totally shine. One of the things when we started our group training is we thought, okay, you know what? This is going to be great. We're going to train patients. We're going to bring patients home. We're going to change their lives. Well, what we didn't expect was, one, that this room was going to change our life, not just the patients. The first week that we went live, anything that could happen, happened. We lost electricity and we found out we didn't have any generator backup. And so that was a little bit, scary that first week. However, when we were trying to run around, when we lost power, we had two patients, a PD patient and an HHD patient, and they were across from one another. And we're running around. Well, these two patients started to talk to each other. Well, what they found out was that they were both ham radio operators, which is a very old dying thing. It's not, you don't hear that too much anymore. And not only did they start talking about it, they exchanged their hand signals, and then they became friends. And not only friends, they formed their own little support group. So all of a sudden, we started seeing how the patients in this room and their caregivers, their partners, everybody started to kind of form their own support group. And one day we had a couple that they live in a motor home, and they just travel, and he's an HHD patient. He had heard about us, and he asked to come over and see the room. So of course, we brought him over. It was after hours, you know, and he came over, and him and his wife stood in that room, and they both started to cry. And the first comment that they made was that they said, "You have no idea the lives that you are going to change with this room." And he began to tell us that when he first started dialysis, him and his wife were taken into a room. The door was closed, and they were in there with a nurse. And that was their training. They said that they felt alone. They felt like they were the only ones going through this. And he said he felt dirty, like there was something wrong with him. And he said, this room allows everybody to see that they're not alone. There's nothing wrong with them, and that they can live their life by just, you know, doing their dialysis, that they can rely on others. And as the time has gone on, we have so many of these stories. We call it and say that the magic happens in this room. Some days you might be in there and there's singing going on. Sometimes it's laughter and people are telling jokes. They all know each other. One day we had a care partner who she saw the blood and she kind of went down, passed out. Well, you know, we're all helping her. She was totally embarrassed, you know, by all of this. We took her out of the room, you know, kind of got her, you know, a cold compress and stuff. Well, what ended up happening was one of the other care partners walked out and started to engage her and said, "Oh my goodness, you should have seen how I was when it first happened." Well, it didn't matter what we were saying because, you know, we're the nurses, we're in there, you know, and stuff. We're not going through it. But this other person who is a care partner and going through it, her words were so encouraging that they became friends. They've exchanged phone numbers, and they also started a Facebook group for care partners. And so that is offered when the patients come in if they want to join that with the other patients. One of the other things that we do is we take in, like we said, everyone. So we do take in terminal patients. They're not going to be with us long, but they have the right to be home. They have the right to have the last remaining time to be with their loved ones. And so we had a patient that he came in and he was terminal cancer and came in a wheelchair, always very sick. His wife was his care partner. So they started their training. And as the time went on, all of a sudden we saw that he wasn't using the wheelchair. He was coming with a walker now, and he was doing much better. Well, at graduation, and for us on graduation day, everybody gets a cap and gown, even the care partner. They get a certificate of completion, and then we dance. We have music, and we have little hand clappers, and we dance and celebrate them all the way to the front door.
It's a party.
It is a party. It is a complete party when it happens. Well, as he was standing up, we were putting on his cap and gown and his wife's. He had his walker, of course, holding on to that. He stopped. He turned to his wife, and I'm going to try to do this without getting too emotional. He turned to his wife, and he embraced her. He just gave her the biggest hug. All of a sudden, he's crying, she's crying, and they came back, and stood there, and she looked at us and she says, "You guys have no idea what gift that you just gave me. My husband," she said, "has been so sick. He has not held me, hugged me for years. He hasn't felt good and he hasn't had any strength. And what you just gave me right now," she says, "was worth everything coming here. And to have that towards the end of his life, that he could actually give me that hug," she says, "that was the greatest gift that we ever gave her." Now, you can imagine, as we were in that room, and Donna can attest to it, there wasn't a dry eye in there.
No.
It was so profound. And those are the stories that we have, and the magic that when we say in this room, we're giving their life back. And there are so many of those stories that we have, and it's constant. And that is the feedback that we know that we are doing the right thing. And that is why we are so passionate about promoting home, promoting group training. It's such a fulfillment that you just cannot even imagine. The win, it's a huge win for our patients. I don't know, Don, if you want to add anything to that. Sorry, I know.
It's
just-
okay.
It's something.
Absolutely. We can go to the next slide if you want. You said it very well. So for patient graduation, like Tammy said, we do a cap and gown ceremony. So both the patient and the caregiver, if they have one, they get their caps and gowns. They are Fresenius blue. And then we play music. I think on the Smart Source, Share Source, one of those sites, there's a little musical device that you can get part of the graduation package. They get their graduation certificate, but the entire clinic, so the training room and the case management side, everybody, Tammy and I, secretary, everybody meets that patient when they walk out of our training facility, and we literally follow them, and we're hooting and hollering, taking pictures, we're clapping and singing and dancing all the way out until they get out of the building, and the patients just love it. Also, one of the things that we didn't touch on, since we are in Notre Dame territory here, on the very outside of our training room, we have a sign, much like the Notre Dame football players say, oh gosh, Tammy, what is it?
Play like a champion. Ours
Play
says,
like a champion. And ours says, train like a champion today. So a lot of times the patients will kind of clap that sign as they get through with their training program. That's just another special piece that they do. And it's just amazing to see the change in these patients that happens out in that room. It is truly magical. There's no other word that Tammy and I can come up with for it. We've tried, but it's just a magical thing to see the change in these patients and their care partners too. It's a huge, huge, huge thing. Next slide.
Next slide.
There's our team.
There it is. I mean, that's our, biomed, our dietitian, social worker, PCTs, nurses, okay. I mean, everybody's here. And I'll tell you, everybody here just plays such an important part in changing the lives of our patients. And the reason that Donna and I speak on this is because we don't want it to be just in our area. We want this to be able to be in all areas. And it's just something that we're very passionate about, is the group training and what it can do. Okay, I guess any questions? I know that's a lot to take in.
So can you see this one? How many PD versus HDHD patients do you have?
Yeah, so right now we're about 130-ish patients, give or take. We just had another transplant, so we'll be at 31, 32 on Monday for HHD. The rest are PD, but we only started with 2 a little over a year ago of HHD.
Impressive. So many like claps and hearts and
Thank you very
Here's
much.
another one. What are your average days of training for PD and HHD? So can you kind of walk through a training day, how many patients you guys can train in a day, all of those things?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't know who wants, so technically, depending on what the modality is, we truly can train up to 16 patients in a day. Our PD patients, again, we only do 4 days a week, so they'll be there for 2 weeks. However, that is taking them home also. We have really, when we talk about lean processes, when you really look at everything that you're doing within your clinic, if there's things that you can eliminate, you know, because it's doubled, you know, duplication, maybe it's something that can be done by somebody else. We really looked at everything. So it's, you know, 2 weeks minus those Wednesdays for a PD patient, 4 weeks for our HHD. Now, I can tell you that we did have one patient who challenged us and said, I'm going to transition from in-center to home, but you have 2 weeks. That's it, to teach me everything I need to do. So we met that challenge. Now she was doing self-cannulation. She started that in the in-center, so it was a little bit easier. But in those 2 weeks, we were able to meet that challenge, and she did graduate. So she did very well.
Any other questions before we go to the next presentation?
There's one about staffing ratio, Yvonne, case manager, patients who takes the calls after hours, and do you have an on-call structure?
Oh, yes. Did you guys see that one?
Yeah,
Thanks, Vicki.
so that's the one that, so our on-call, the nurses rotate that. And they pick and choose how they want to set it up. But on Wednesday, there is somebody that is on call all day, as is the weekends, and after hours. But we're open from 8 in the morning till 6:30 at night is how that we're open. And I can tell you with the training and stuff, everybody gets their breaks, everybody gets their lunches. They are not overwhelmed because again, we have streamlined everything down. And then if you're talking about the staffing ratios, training up to 16 patients in a day, there's 2 nurses and 1 PCT. And because we've streamlined everything, we have a very good flow of how the patients come in, how they are trained, and including the respite, because there's respite for both HHD and PD in that room too. Those nurses are able to do all of that, have time to be able to do their ordering, anything like that, their documentation, have their breaks, have their lunch, and they're not overwhelmed. And then on the case management side, it's a little different because you're not doing this. When I first came, it was like a 1 to 20 to 25 ratio. But because we run it more like a physician office, it's set up a little bit different because the trainers are doing the training, the case managers are doing the case management. It leaves them a lot of time in their day to be able to do that. So for almost 130 patients, you have your LPN, our care team assistant, you have a PCT, and you have your 3 nurses. But those are case management. So you're able actually to do a little bit more because you are going up to the full scope of practice for everyone. And you reallocate and delegate certain responsibilities that aren't needed for nurses. So they're actually doing less work now than what they did previous with the 71 patients, if that makes sense.
Malia, all chairs in our training facility are plumbed for home hemo. So we could do 8 hemo patients at a time if need be.
And yes, we have a dietitian and a social worker in our clinic.
And there was a question about the cap and gown. Is that just for graduation or do they get to keep it?
They don't get to keep it. We do, yeah, so they don't, unfortunately. We have talked about just, because they're cheap enough on Amazon, that maybe just allowing them to keep it, but yeah, they don't at this point.
So our case managers do handle the clinic visits. If there is a lag out in the training facility. Those nurses will go help with clinic visits, and vice versa. If it's a slow day on the case management side, then they will come out into the training room and help. So everything is very reciprocal within the clinic. It's still a complete team, although it is divided case management and training. We're still one team, and everybody does and is responsible for everything.
Yeah, and for being centrally located, I will say this for the clinics. Our farthest clinic is probably 35 minutes from us, and we have patients almost 2 hours away from our clinic. So, and then an hour in the other direction. So we do cover a very large area.
Graphically, yeah. Malia, you had a question about rotating case management and training. We absolutely allow our nurses to do that and PCTs, if they want to. What we have found is they kind of get into their niche and they really don't want to change. We have nurses who have fallen in love with training, and we have nurses who are in love with case management, but they all are given the opportunity to say, hey, I'm a little tired of case management. I want to go in the training facility. That's always an option for our staff.
Yeah, and they're all trained, all cross-trained in all modalities. And when I first came to the clinic, it was very rare that anybody got vacation. It was just like, well, we can't, it's too busy and this and that. They actually take their vacation. And I mean, they take vacation because of the way that we had set up the clinic in this manner. There's plenty of time for people to be able to take their vacation and have that work-life balance now.
Do you manage blood draws and iron infusions? We do on the case management side. In the training facility, we teach as many patients as possible to administer their own Mircera at home. Home hemo, they are taught how to give their own Mircera and do their own iron at home. Of course, they draw their own blood, but most of the regular blood draws and iron infusions on the case management side, a lot of those are done by our LPN.
And then there was, I think, one last question. Are all of the patients, are they training on the same day in the facilities? Or are they all on training day 1 or 2?
That
Yeah.
varies.
Yeah.
We try to schedule groups together as much as possible. But as soon as you do that, then you get a physician call in and says, hey, I need to start this patient and they need to start tomorrow. We try to schedule as many patients together as we can. But there's always some that slip in there. So I may have somebody who's been here for 3 days when I've got to start another one. It's just how it works sometimes.
Yeah, but for the most part, we do try to do that, but we don't stop anybody. We don't hold up any of their training. We bring them right in wherever they're at. And especially with the hospital patients, those are the urgent and optimal starts. We need to get them in right away as soon as they're discharged from the hospital. So we definitely work around all of that to make it happen. So none of our patients, we don't have a waiting list for them to get in.
Well, thank you guys both for your presentation today. I appreciate it. I can feel the energy from everyone else that saw it as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Chorba. I'm going to be presenting today for a Network One facility on hospitalizations, readmissions, and ED visits. Tammy, Donna, I want to thank you guys. Your story is absolutely inspirational. Mine will probably not be as exciting as yours. You guys are rocking it, and I just want to congratulate you guys. We can go to the next slide. So this facility is in Lebanon, New Hampshire. It is open 6 days a week, and it provides in-center hemodialysis, PD, and HHD. Their current census is 87. Next slide. This facility was picked as a high performer and was asked to share what they have used in the past and present to reduce hospitalizations, readmissions, and ER visits. The network wanted to showcase their efforts they have used to decrease these incidents by sharing their RCA and PDSA cycle in detail. You can go to the next slide. The facility did this by taking each primary driver from the NCC hospitalization change packet and one secondary driver to put focus on. They then identified one change idea from each of these and tailored these interventions to their patient population. We can go to the next slide. So they adopted a culture that embraces patient-centeredness and high performance by creating a culture that contributes to low hospitalization rates. They implemented continuous quality improvement by tracking measures and discussing the data in QAPI. They implemented processes to prevent hospitalizations and to avoid readmissions by taking a proactive approach to prevent hospitalizations. They educated patients and staff to prepare staff to prevent more hospitalizations. Next slide. So this facility went through and found out their root cause for inpatient hospitalizations was patients' non-compliance with fluid management and mistreatment. This was causing an increase in the number of their hospitalizations and their ED visits. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to see actually each piece of the PDSA cycle and what this facility did to work on decreasing these numbers. So for the plan cycle, this facility had fluid report cards that they wanted to send out. They reinforced education and they re-educated their staff. And they also started something which was called a makeup session. They, for the due, they passed out the fluid report cards every month and they reviewed them with their patients. They provided TED Talks. They revised their schedule to allow them one designated open chair. And they each actually had phone scripts for patients calling off for treatment. So the patient would call in and they would say they were calling off, and then they would provide them with a different time for them to show up to encourage them not to miss their treatment. They reviewed their clinical quality scores and metrics during their monthly QAPI meeting during their study. And for their ACT, they decreased mistreatments in fluid action groups, which correlated and decreased hospitalizations. And then for the last slide, by putting these processes in place and finding out the root cause of what their hospitalizations were, last year's facility goals and outcomes. So last year, the hospitalization goal was 27 or less. They were able to end their year with 14 hospitalizations. For 30-day readmissions, their goal was 4, and they were able to end their year with 0 readmissions. And their emergency visit goal was 11, and they ended it with 7 ED visits that year. And I believe that was my last slide. Does anyone have any questions? If no one has any questions, if there's any more questions for Tammy or Donna, feel free to ask them. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer those for you. So their Pacific Fluid Report card just showed them what their weights were, their target weight with their dry weight, and what was the interdialectic weight gain in between there. And it showed how much they were gaining in between each treatment.
Okay, I think that might be, how did we fund these projects and facilities? That might be for Donna and I. I can tell you that we did ours for very little money. I mean, very little. What we did was we looked around our existing clinic, what we could kind of modify. And this is the truth, but I even went like for pictures. I found photos on the internet that were allowed to be printed and had them done at Walgreens, bought some wipeable frames, and for about 18 bucks to kind of jazz up the clinic a little bit, make it look a little bit more homey. Bought some furniture off of Amazon and we built it in my office.
Clearance rack at Lowe's.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it was. I'm talking for I mean, just a little over a couple $10,000+ We were able to modify everything that we've done, and I can tell you, the way that we're doing it right now, it really I mean, so from a financial point, it truly is a cash cow, because of the amount of patients that you can train, and to be able to take in those resources, those financial resources. Doing it this way, it is financially stable. I'll kind of say it that way. But get your buy-in, come with a plan to your medical director, you know, to your bosses, come with a plan. And that's exactly what we did. We had everything kind of all laid out and the path that we wanted to take.
Any suggestions if you don't have an open area or separate rooms?
Yep. So look at if you have a couple of rooms, maybe do a walkthrough in your clinic. Can you take down maybe one wall and then have a larger open area? If you can't, where can you kind of modify? Maybe you have an existing closet, you know, or a storage room that's a little bit bigger that you can use that, repurpose that, and move your supplies somewhere else. And we did that a lot in our clinic too, of moving around things. You can also say, okay, we're going to train in the morning and then we'll train in the afternoon. So if you're really a very tiny clinic, there's a lot of things that you can do to make that happen. So you could do that training in the morning and then another one at night. You'd still have two. Look at the hours of your clinic. You know, are you capturing those patients that are still working? By us staying open later, we get those patients that still are working. You know, they have their commercial insurance, so they can do all of that. So there is a lot of things that you can do. And Donna and I, you know, like I said, we are so passionate about this that if you want to reach out to us at all, we're more than happy to talk through a lot of the processes that we've already done. How did, you know, sometimes when we hit a barrier, how do we get around that? What we modified as time went on, what we found that worked or didn't work. We're more than happy to help in any way that we can, because at the end of the day, we know that we're bringing more patients home.
Donna, Tammy, thank you again so very much. We're hitting the 3 o'clock hour. I just want to thank everybody who participated today and joined our call. We greatly appreciate you, and we will have this recording up in IPRO Learn for anyone who would like to listen to it. Thank you guys again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.